Come on in. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about Survivor players who were completely sandbagged in the edit. These players were big deals on the actual island, strategic players with a lot of social influence, who barely registered on TV and who you probably don't remember. Not everyone can be the main character. Someone's got to get the least amount of confessionals, and these players drew the short straw. But why? Throughout this video, I'll talk about what moves these players made on the island, why they deserve more credit than they got on the show, as well as my speculation for why I think the edited show sandbagged them so hard. For this list, I'll be excluding winners because you could honestly make a whole video on underedited winners, and I'd rather focus on players who didn't win the million. Finally, I'll be keeping this to players who received an average of less than one confessional per episode because I want to get real obscure. Grab your best purple shirt, put some coffee on, and join me as we take a look at good Survivor players who were completely sandbagged in the edit. At number 5 is Stacy in Survivor Fiji, a forgotten villain overshadowed in the edit by just about everyone. Stacy was a lackluster social player and really solid strategic player, the inventor of Survivor strategy still used to this day, and the first person ever idled out of the game. Stacy is one of my random faves. She had the potential to be a classic Amy-esque Ice Queen villain. But, sorry Stacy, we've got to shove another Rocky confessional in here. Stacy was in the majority for most of her game, either on Original Moto, where she low-key ran things with Lisi, and later in the post-merge where she joined up with Earl's Syndicate Alliance. Socially, Stacy was not great. She talked down to players on the bottom, and her most memorable moment the entire season is when she berates Dreams for not knowing how to make coffee in a French press.
Well, I don't know how to freaking use it, so if someone could tell me...
You have to boil water, you put the coffee in the bottom, you pour the boiling water on top, and you let it sit for about 3 minutes, and then you press it down, and then you have coffee. Simple as that.
Yeah, not gonna lie, that actually sounds kind of complicated. I'm just gonna put the grounds in my mouth and gargle some hot water. Stacy gets a pretty rude awakening at the Touchy Subjects Challenge where she learns that everyone hates her, but according to interviews, she put in the social work to change the tribal perception of her as entitled and mean. Eventually, she became the first bona fide victim of the immunity idol, when Yao Man idles her out at Final 6. Stacy's crowning achievement is undoubtedly the time she out of nowhere proposes blindsiding Edgardo, the least likely player on the opposing alliance to have an idol. Don't mind me, just casually inventing Survivor strategy still used every single season. Overall, Stacy was a player whose story I think was kind of difficult to tell. She was bad socially but slowly recovered, and she was good strategically but overshadowed by the bigger personalities of her allies. First Lisi and Alex, then later Earl and Yao Man. Or she was simply nuked in the edit because she was the first victim of the idol and they didn't want us to be too attached to her. Either or. At number 4 is Artis in Survivor Philippines. Shout out to the guy who hated Mike Scoopin before it was cool. Artis was painted as a grumpy one-note villain in Philippines, the third fiddle in the Abby Maria and Pete alliance who were in opposition to their tribe's heroes, a pig-butchering weirdo and the author of the Mein Kampf of child rearing. Time has straight up vindicated this man. Most of Artis's content on the show was about his seemingly random, one-sided rivalry with Scoopin'. But Artis revealed after the fact that the reason he disliked Scoopin' so much was something that didn't make the show at all. Per Artis, Scoopin' built an unstable shelter on Tandang which collapsed, thankfully, while no one was in it. And Artis believed that would have seriously injured anyone who was inside. In the game, Artis was safely in the majority throughout the pre-merge and early post-merge until Scoopin' flipped on Tandang and joined up with the remains of the other two tribes to blindside him. I don't think Artis was ever going to be a main character this season. He only made the midpoint, and Abby and Pete lasted longer, and their chaotic gameplay was admittedly more fun to watch, but I do wish we could have seen more of him. 8 confessionals is simply not enough for a guy who had this much control. Plus, this guy's interesting as fuck. He was a longtime superfan applicant and was diagnosed with and beat stage 4 cancer before the show. God, imagine applying 12 freaking times and finally getting on and ending up on a tribe with Mike Scoopin'. I'd be mad too. At number 3 is Liliana in Survivor Fiji. Yep, more Survivor Fiji. As the first 3 episodes of Fiji aired, one player was conspicuously absent from getting literally any content on the show. And this was only the second time a player hadn't received a confessional within the first 3 episodes. Survivor had a really bad habit back in the day of completely ignoring random pre-mergers in the edit for episodes at a time, only to spike the airtime the episode or the episode before they got the boot. And Liliana is the most egregious case of that ever. Oh, the second she started narrating this reward challenge for no reason, I knew she was toast. But why was Liliana absent from the edit? Liliana was one of the chief architects of the Explorers Alliance, a Day 1 alliance on Fiji which was completely removed from the edit. The Explorers were largely the younger players in the game, and they were opposite the Builders Alliance, which was mostly the older players. Someday we'll do a whole video on important alliances that never made air, but for now, unseen politics and a general divide between these two groups dictated a lot of Fiji. And Liliana was widely regarded as the leader, or at least co-leader, of the Explorers Alliance. Her post-game interviews. In episode 4, Moto wins immunity for the 4th time in a row, but are given the option to give up immunity or give up their luxurious camp, and they choose to sacrifice one of their own instead. Must be some comfy couches. Lacey, in particular, really pushes hard for Liliana to go here. We're told this is because Liliana's playing the flirt card, and that definitely factored in, but Liliana being such an influential member of the Explorers also played into her elimination big time. Her alliance believed her to be at risk of flipping back to the Explorers at the merge. Without Liliana's influence on a completely unseen alliance, Cassandra almost certainly goes home here. And that's my guess as to why Liliana was sandbagged in the edit. The politics of her elimination were largely due to something that didn't even make air. The architect of an alliance, the only player to ever get voted out without ever losing a single challenge, reduced to only being remembered for a Lacey confessional.
I know in her little diabolical Mexican mind, she's trying to come up with something, you know?
Ouch. At number 2 is Chelsea in Survivor Ghost Island. Going by confessionals, Chelsea is literally the most under-edited player of all time, with 4 confessionals across 12 episodes, for an average of just 0.33 confessionals per episode. That's more purple than Purple Kelly, the namesake of being purple. Chelsea was straight up good at the game. I'd say she's probably the 3rd or 4th best player this season. She was one of the bigger strategists out there and Dom's original #1 throughout the pre-merge, and she was in a great position to go to the end until Dom and Wendell betrayed her. She was in lockstep with Dom on both original Navidi and on the second swap, where together they came up with the idea to blindside Bradley. And later, she was one of the only Navidis willing to actually go against the grain and try to break up Navidi strong, only for that potentially exciting plan to get foiled by, I'll give you one guess. You guessed it, Laurel. Throughout most of her game, she was in the majority running things. Yet you wouldn't know that from the show, where she's not even a background character. Seriously, her first confessional is episode 4, then later she has a 4-episode stretch without any confessionals. I genuinely do not know why Chelsea was screwed so hard in the edit. Maybe they wanted to hide her alliance with Dom because she didn't vote for him in the end, and that would be confusing for the audience. Maybe she was too similar a player to Kellen, and Kellen was better at articulating her strategy. Players are often given little content because they're bad at confessionals, but I don't know. Secret scenes show that Chelsea can string together sentences just fine. It's not like we're in the Leaf tier here.
I'd rather come out guns a-blazing, going after the guys, than just sit back and let them take me out easy.
Which editor's dog did she run over? It's the only explanation. The player sandbagged the hardest in the edit is Brett in Survivor Samoa. You've heard Sam talk about being the glue guy on Survivor 47, but Brett was the glue guy of Survivor Samoa. Brett got the first confessional on Samoa, then disappeared completely until the penultimate episode, where he suddenly emerged in the edit as the final boss, a social and strategic titan of the game that the Foa 4 had to take down to win. And I'm sorry, Survivor, but I'm really not buying what you're selling here. Prior to his breakout in the second to last episode, Brett had 4 confessionals. I'm a little insulted by this, honestly. On the actual island, though, Brett was a huge threat. He was beloved on Galoo. He was in tight with just about everyone, and arguably the social glue holding together the various factions on this tribe. He was in with Laura's Woman's Alliance, he was in with Dave and Monica, he had relationships with players on the periphery like Eric. Post-merge, as Galoo imploded around him, Brett refocused his game on making inroads with members of Foa, particularly Natalie, whom he bonded with over their shared Christian faith. And in a jury vote, Brett probably wins against literally any post-merge player. Brett probably had a Hall of Fame social game. I say probably because we saw literally none of it. Brett, like everyone else on this season, including its winner, was hosed in the edit, cast aside in order to give Russell an unprecedented 108 repetitive confessionals. I can only hear him talk about Russell Seed for so long.
You plant that little seed in their head, in their little brain, and then it grows, and it's called a Russell seed. It takes over their whole mind. I'm gonna have them all under control like zombies walking around.
To put things in perspective, Russell alone got 108 confessionals. The entire Galoo tribe got 158 confessionals. For Brett, they really struggled to edit his great social game, and when he emerged as the endgame threat for Foa, it just rings hollow because who is this guy? Seriously, he's not here the whole season. He's barely in the background. Spotting Brett this season is like playing Where's Waldo. Ooh. There he is, a wisp of hair. Got nothing else for ya. If you liked this video more than Stacy likes her French press, like and subscribe and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.